Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 4 of Moriarty the Patriot, a rare breed. I'm really excited about these episodes because The Scarlet Eyes is the name of a Sherlock story, I believe. So I'm liking the idea that maybe this series will take Sherlock tales but give them a spin in Moriarty's perspective and kind of have the outcome be a little bit different. I'm thinking that that might be the case. So I'm really curious to see what all is going to go down this season with these individual stories and if we're going to have two-parters, things like that. I've also been told there's a manga that this is based off of. Now, I've been told that the manga is different than the anime in that there are parts that the anime leaves out, like certain arcs and story arcs and things like that. And so I wonder, like Bungo Stray Dogs, I'm reading the manga to try to catch up right now with the anime. So I feel like I can read the manga and watch the anime at the same time. But with this show, I may wait until I'm done with Moriarty, but I definitely want to read the manga afterwards because I really like this show so far and I'm curious to see what all the manga has was left out of the manga for the anime. But last episode, we finished up the conclusion of getting the backstory on our three main characters, Albert, Lewis. I've been told it's Lewis, not Louis. Lewis and William Moriarty. So these three that have become brothers over time, partners in crime, to try to make the world a better place through the crime consulting. I'm very interested to see when Sherlock gets thrown into the mix of all this, how that's going to go, because Sherlock is kind of usually like a morally centered character, even though depending on his iteration, like BBC Sherlock is a little bit more chaotic neutral, whereas in the actual textbooks and the actual novels, Sherlock's more like just good, true good. So, or true neutral. So interesting. I'm very curious to see how they portray him in this show. And the other characters too, especially Watson. Because I feel like Watson and Lewis would be kind of like on equal footing. I'm not so sure. But in any case, I'm really excited to see how this episode goes. I hope you all are too. So let's dive into it, shall we? We are going to start old Moriarty the Patriot here, episode 4, here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. All right. That was a really good standalone story. I liked that a lot. I like the idea that we are going through Sherlock tales, but instead of solving the crime, we're starting them. So that's an interesting twist. That's an interesting twist and everything. Man, the Viscount, what a douche lord. I don't blame them at all for killing him because it was like this whole idea of like blood and nobility and them tying back around to it and him like, he wouldn't even help the boy, the kid that was dying. Like he had his own doctor and he wouldn't help him. It's like, that's bad karma, man. You're just asking for it. But I like that it wasn't just the dad affected by it. It was mainly the wife. The wife like losing her kid and having all these dreams about her son being alive and being older. And like, you could just tell the whole time she was just sitting there. And for a second, I thought maybe she was over the pot. And I kept thinking during this that Moriarty had talked to her and maybe she was making the jam over the pot, like the grapefruit jam, the marmalade. I thought that maybe she'd been doing that the whole time. That was her part in it. I thought they poisoned the marmalade at first, but not the case. And then as soon as he said he had homemade medicine, I was like, well, they're going to tamper with that. That guy's the gardener. He can mix it up with all kinds of stuff. But I like the idea that obviously that wouldn't have worked because if they'd done an autopsy, then they would have seen the poison and they would have assumed it was the gardener, right? But this was kind of like the homemade chemistry version of going around that where, oh, grapefruit, like hyper interacts with the medicine. It's going to make your blood pressure plummet instead of stabilizing it. So it's like the things you don't mix. And so I hadn't even taken that into account. And so I was like, yeah, well, that would have been a natural way to kill him where you couldn't suspect anything. Because really, you're talking about being a perfect crime. If the wife had stabbed him, then it wouldn't have worked. So I guess they were just trying to like get him worked up where he had the heart episode and then he needed to take the medicine. That was the whole idea of doing that. And I kept thinking they were going to poison the medicine. But in hindsight, this all worked out pretty much a lot better than that because this way, if they do an autopsy, it's a natural cause of death. They knew he was taking the medicine. They knew he had the heart ailment. He ate the grapefruit and just didn't realize that it couldn't counteract. And Moriarty, even though he's a math teacher, he's not, people don't know that he knows chemistry too, so, or he's super intelligent, so no, how would anybody know? They were just giving him this exotic homemade grapefruit juice and everything. None would be the wiser. And then they get the husband a letter to go work at Queen Mary's garden. So he gets to go to London and escape from that. I like the idea, the rare breed, not only talking about the flowers and the garden itself, but talking about just nobility, and him saying, the Viscount saying, like, generation after generation, like, only a rare breed, you have to have the seeds of a rare breed to create a rare breed, right? And I like the idea that Moriarty and Lewis have come from the exact opposite and have become their own rare breed in a sense, but it's not nobility. And I like the idea that Moriarty goes out and he actually goes to the bars and stuff and patronizes with the common folk, because that's what he is too. And I like that the wife, at first, she was very antagonistic towards him because she saw him only as nobility. And it's funny because we know Moriarty is not nobility. He's pretending to be. So there's that. So that's really interesting. But I love this show. The lighting, the use of color and symbolism is really, really well done. Like, I loved when she was cutting the grapefruit and everything was getting more and more muted. I love when shows do that, especially anime, when they mute the surroundings. It kind of like just expresses that atmosphere, and it gets grainier and more distorted, and you could just see like the reds of the grapefruit juice, and you can see the greens and stuff. Green and red are two colors in this series that are really punctuated. And I think one of it's because of Albert. His whole color scheme is very green. But then you have the red of Moriarty's eyes, and you have the red of like the background whenever he's committing the crime. Like, it's all very, very, very interesting. But the Viscount, yeah, like the servants, the way that they all have their heads down, like you can just tell that it's very much he's in control of the situation, but nobody likes it. And I love that how condescending he is. And Moriarty, as soon as he was like talking about the rare breed nobility, and you just like pan over to Moriarty and Lewis, and it's like, yeah, they're gonna kill this guy. But yeah, the shadows and the use on the wife's face, and just how dim and gloomy it looks in their house. And at the very end, when they're getting on the train, it's colorful and bright. Like, they were able to, they're totally justified in this episode for wanting to get rid of the Viscount. Like, he was just awful, the worst, and didn't think anything about it. Like, that one, it's like, yeah, nah. So I'm curious why Moriarty has set up camp at this random town, other than the beacon has come out and he's heard the call that there's some trouble afoot. And I like how he phrased it, that there's darkness that needs to be dispelled. And Albert takes it as, oh, the Viscount is the darkness. And Moriarty's like, no, it's not the Viscount, it's the darkness in the mom's heart. Like, she's suffering because she has this darkness from losing her son and not getting retribution or revenge from her son's murderer. And so his solution is like, if we get rid of the Viscount, that will free her from those gloomy feelings and she'll be able to move on with her life. So, I mean, it's a thought, and so far it seemed to be working, but I have a feeling Sherlock's going to come in and muck it all up, like he do. I love that Albert frequents, I talked about in the reaction, when he meets Albert in the shop, you know how there's wealthy restaurant, like really upscale restaurants that are way too expensive, but they have like the title of the restaurant's all in lowercase letters, or it's just like a simple word like coffee shop, period. Like, it's something very posh and very simple, but it means it's simple and minimalist, but it's all very extravagant. As soon as I saw the coffee house that just says tea, coffee, I'm like, oh my God, Albert, you would frequent such a place. But yeah, I love the idea of these three brothers, and that I like that Moriarty didn't want to do it by himself. He told Lewis, he's like, we'll wait till Albert comes and then we'll all go together. Like, I really liked that. I liked that a lot. And then bringing all the food and everything, and this beautiful garden, this tea party. It's interesting. It doesn't seem like the Viscount had any relatives or any heirs, which I think is interesting, which may explain too why he wasn't willing to help the son too, because he's not a parent. He doesn't understand. But yeah, the red in her face when she had the knife and the grapefruit, I was like, oh, she gonna try to murder him. Like, that was really, really interesting that she just went for it. And then the husband Burton, he stopped her, but it was all a distraction to get him worked up to where they could get the medicine ready, right? And I like at the very end, he's like, you did well. I honestly thought that they were going to stick around for him dying. I honestly thought they were, but they were told to leave to make it to where they didn't look suspicious, and where I guess they'd have an alibi then, so if any servants saw them in the area, they could possibly pin it on them, but they left So the only ones there were the aristocrats, and they're the ones that murdered. I love that shot of Moriarty like over him, and his face is in shadows. I love that frame, and everything's muted, and it's just purples and reds and greens. And he's like, "What did you tell them?" And it's like just him looking over like a grim reaper. I love it. I love it. And he's like, "Why, I did this crime." It's like, oh, Moriarty. I so cannot wait until Sherlock gets into this story. I cannot. I'm going to guess that I'm going to be shipping Sherlock and Moriarty, obviously. But I'm very excited to see how his character... Because right now, honestly, Moriarty doesn't really have any... there's nobody that's really on the same level as him. Lewis is his brother, and Lewis is smart, but Lewis isn't like a super genius like Moriarty. And Albert is smart, but Albert's more... I like that this Moriarty is still charming and has finesse to him. Albert has the most finesse, and Lewis has the most kindness, and Moriarty has the most brains. But Moriarty kind of has a combination of all of them, so that's interesting. But yeah, this was a very good standalone episode. It was very, very it was like, it was a satisfying death. It was like, okay, this Viscount, he had it coming, and it was a satisfying resolution to his story. I thought that was very, very good. But yeah, just a cool standalone story. I liked it. I'm trying to remember what the original rare... I wonder if I need to look up what the original rare breed, if these are in fact Sherlock stories. I think while I have you all here for this discussion. Sherlock. Do we have? Of course, the instant thing that comes up. I'm not seeing anything about that. Only thing that comes up is like a Western. But interesting. I kept wondering if it was a Sherlock story, but I guess it wasn't. It might have been just a standalone. So I'm curious to know how the manga holds up with this and what all... Again, I'm not going to read the manga first. I'm not going to read the manga while I'm watching this series, because if it skips around and leaves stuff out, I don't want to get spoiled for future episodes on mistake. But when I'm done with Moriarty, I may go back and read the manga just for fun. That'd be cool. And then talk about it on Twitter or something. So, yeah, but that was a really good episode. I'm curious to know what you all thought. I really, like I said, I love the use of color, the symbolism, the voice acting and animation was top notch in this episode. I'm very curious to know when Sherlock's going to come into the story, because I think what's going to happen is that we're going to get some stories where Moriarty's doing his thing, the crime consultancy business is good, everything's going all right, and then in pops in Sherlock to mess it all up, to put a little grain of sand in the gears, right? So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I really like this episode. This series has been a lot of fun so far, and I'm excited to see what happens in episode 5. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 5 of Moriarty the Patriot. Bye.